Thursday night, and we are getting you geared up with some Bengals talk before Thursday night football, and of course, getting you going into the weekend as the Bengals get set to take on a team that they don't see very often in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And sometimes that is a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing, depending on a lot of different things. There is a lot of talking points between these two teams this weekend, though, because there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of high-profile names, particularly on the offensive side of the ball for both teams. And both teams are fighting for a potential division lead, even though one of them has a losing record. But we'll talk about it all. And we've had a hell of a busy week, John Sheeran. And it's been a lot of fun. We had our show, The Aftermath, on Monday. We surprised folks with a fun interview, courtesy of Old Spice and Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America, with Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins. You were there in person, my friend. That was a lot of fun. And now we get to talk about this game coming up here. How are you, John? I've been babbling on for a minute and a half on this intro. How are you, buddy?
I'm riding a high, man. It's not every day that even for guys like us in our position to get to interview a star Bengal in person. So that was an awesome experience Tuesday. My favorite part, honestly, though, because it was like in the second story of Withrow High School. When, if you're unfamiliar with the area, it's a pretty big high school. I think it's officially called Withrow University High School because it's a pretty big like school and facility in general. So we were on like the second story, and I just shook T's hand, like, told him good luck with the rest of the season and everything. And I exited the room, and there was legit like 50, 80 kids like outside of the room waiting to come in. And then as soon as I exited the room, someone inside said, all right, you guys can come on in. You can meet T, you can get autographs or whatever. And I was holding the door, like about to leave, and the kids just all funneled in. And I was just holding the door for literally dozens of kids, like all with smiles on their faces, wanting to meet T. Higgins. And it made me think, man, like if I was like in high school and one of my favorite players was in my school and I got to meet him, it would have completely made my years. So it was awesome that those kids got to have those moments with T. Spoke with all of them earlier in the afternoon, but it was a great day for all those kids for sure.
Very cool, and very cool for us. Hopefully cool for our listeners as well. Hopefully you all enjoy that. We got a YouTube member in the house, Michaela Garfield, saying "Who day, Michaela?" We do have stuff coming to you, I promise. I know you won that trivia, and of course we've got a little something extra for you being a member of the YouTube channel as well. We want to honor that, so we're sorry for the delay, but it's coming to you. I promise. Same with the rest of you who won some trivia stuff, and we'll be doing more of that down the road too. But thanks again for your specific support, Michaela. We appreciate you. And all of the listeners here, whether that's on the YouTube channel or on the audio side of things, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, all of them, we appreciate you. Now, here we go right now. We did not ask T. Higgins this question from Mr. Whisper in the YouTube chat here, giving us another donation. We are going to start wrapping up these donations and put them in a nice digital box, a gift to the Pollock Family Foundation here. Thank you all for all of your support, and Mr. Whisper especially. You seem to be every show giving a nice donation there, and that'll help out the Pollock Family Foundation. So we're going to give them a nice gift right before the holidays here, but appreciate that. We did not ask, specifically, we did not ask about T. Higgins' injury and what's going on there, but we are going to get to the injury report, the hamstring. Those are always tricky, John, and I guess that's as good a place as any right now to kind of kick things off, is the injury report, who's looking in, who's looking out, all that kind of stuff, to help answer Mr. Whisper's question here, and obviously give everybody an idea of what's going on.
Yeah, so a handful of injuries that the Bengals are dealing with right now, and a handful of guys who haven't practiced at all this week. Most notably is Trey Hendrickson and Mike Hilton. Now, Hendrickson apparently broke his wrist in the middle of the Browns game, apparently played through the fourth quarter with it. Zach Taylor didn't specify that it was specifically a broken wrist. He just clarified it as a wrist issue, but it has kept him out of practice for 2 days, and that's a good a sign as any to indicate that he won't play on Sunday. And the same kind of goes for Mike Hilton. And remember, like, it looked like Hilton had suffered a pretty serious injury on the field, but he ended up coming back and playing basically the entire game with it, but he hasn't practiced either with a knee injury. So in came Jalen Davis for him for a couple of snaps, Jalen Davis being the backup slot cornerback. but Davis didn't have to play the entire game because Hill came back in. But Davis is now dealing with an injury of his own, and he hasn't practiced at all with a thumb. He's been in like a sling, I believe, so he hasn't practiced. So where does that lead to? But if not the first round pick for the Bengals this year in Dax Hill. Now, remember, Hill was a slot cornerback mainly at his time in Michigan, and he's mainly just been like a backup free safety, a first defensive back off the bench, if you will, for this team this year, Anthony. And now it seems like he is going to get a shot at being like a starter in a role that he was very comfortable with in Michigan.
Now, as I went back and I actually rewatched some of the Tennessee game, I believe it was that one where he was sent in on a blitz, specifically from the defensive backfield and whatnot. So they're going to probably ask a lot of different things from him. One of those games where one of these young guys are going to need to kind of grow up quickly. We've had Cam Taylor-Britt, great friend of the show, Cam Taylor-Britt, grow up quickly as well because of the injury to Chidobe Awuzie. We do have the clip of the soundbite here of Dax. I think he was talking about playing in the slot, correct?
Yes, this is okay. Him being asked about returning to that position.
You call it slot your old stomping grounds? Is that? Oh, yeah. I mean, I know that. I mean, is it like that? Is it like the ride a bike thing? Is it that easy to just kind of be like, I've done this before?
Yeah, but at the same time, no, just because the level of competition is so high, and so you really just have to be very detailed in everything you do, and that's what I really want to do this year, or playing the nickel. Really just want to fine tune, like I said earlier, and then just making sure that I'm in the right spots. So,
what's your I don't know, what's it going to be like going against Brady? Let's prepare for Brady tonight.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like this week really just been a good start just because of watching film and really just getting a grasp of what he does. I mean, he does it really well. One of the best to ever do it. So really just picking up on his details and his ways on how he finds the defense and finds different coverages. So I really just want to study his game, as well as the people I'll be going against.
That was an interesting music choice in the background of the locker room there. But yeah, I mean, this is Tom Brady, Anthony, and he typically finds weaknesses in defenses. And I don't know if we want to classify Dax Hill as a weakness. He's a really good player coming out of Michigan, but this will probably be his first start, granted at a position that he's got experience with. But if there's any point in the Bengals defense where Brady's like, hey, let's test this guy out, it's probably going to be Dax in the slot. No?
I mean, inexperience can be a weakness. I mean, that's just the bottom line with it, really. I mean, it's not really an indictment of the player per se. It's more just lack of playing time and, being a rookie. It just kind of comes with the territory a little bit there. And we know Brady, if he sees some sort of leak in the dam or I guess a scab to pick or whatever weird metaphor you want to use, he's going to find a spot and he's going to keep digging at it, right? I mean, that's just if he perceives a weakness there, if he perceives openings for his offense to make plays there, he's going to keep going there. That's what he's made his career on. And so guys like Cam Taylor-Britt and Dax Hill, your top two picks this year, who weren't getting a lot of playing time early, now you're going to have to heavily rely on them on this one as they go up against the GOAT here. So that provides definitely an interesting situation for the Bengals here. And I'll rebring it. Thank you for queuing up that video, John. I'm going to rebring up the injury report as we kind of continue talking about this here. I think I pinned the link in the live chat. I did. So you can check that out on Cincy Jungle. But I mean, the list is extensive. Obviously you've got Lael Collins, who did not practice Wednesday, went full Thursday, so he should be fine. But he last week kind of had didn't he exit the game last week with what I think it was an ankle situation or whatnot. And so, that he's kind of been nicked up throughout the year as well, although the offensive line is playing a lot better. You mentioned Hendrickson, you mentioned Hilton. I don't know if you mentioned Hurst, but he has also not practiced this week. So not looking like he is going to be in the game there. Reeder got the rest on Wednesday, but went full. And then, of course, we've got who Mr. Whisper asked about. We've got Tyler Boyd, and we've got another article we'll share with you on that in just a second. But if you were to guess about Higgins here, he went limited both days, as did Boyd. I mean, obviously the Bengals last week, you know, when they have all three of those guys, obviously it's lethal. When they have two of the big three, depending on which two you're talking about, they are still highly effective. When you have one, I love what the Trents bring, but there is a noticeable difference without Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins, or Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, or whomever. When there's two of the big three not on the field, there is a noticeable difference. There's no doubt about it. As you sit here today and you want to put on your genie hat and look into the crystal ball, I mean, what are you thinking about these wide receivers with the issues they're dealing with here?
So it does sound like that Boyd is going to try to play, and I don't think it's going to be a situation where the coaches are like, I don't really know about this. It's not like they're going to test out like Boyd's finger, I think, in the beginning of the game and say, yeah, we're shutting you down. Like, if he is practicing with it, he's got the tape over the finger, and he's doing all these things to make sure that he's ready to play, I would bet on Tyler Boyd playing. And I feel like that is a kind of a surprise based off of what we heard about the injury right after the game and whatnot. We thought that he could potentially miss a week or two, but this is a guy that, embodies toughness at that position. There was that famous moment against the Dolphins a few years ago where he's literally limping off the field so the Bengals don't take a timeout in that
crawling.
Game. He's played hurt before, and this is definitely one of the more unique injuries that a receiver can injure, and it's going to impact him, and it's probably impacting him right now in practice, but the more he practices with it, I think the better off he will be on Sunday. With Higgins, it does seem like it's 50-50. Like, he's not a full participant in practice just like Boyd is yet, and I don't know if that's going to change tomorrow on Friday. I'm sure we'll get the answer to that after this recording tomorrow, but it does seem like he's going to be a game time decision, and it's going to be the same process like this past week. They're going to test him in the pregame warm-ups, see where he is. And it could be a situation again where he's active and he either doesn't play or plays a very limited role. It's been twice now this year where he's been a starter and has played like one or no snaps throughout the game, and that could be another situation here.
There's been a couple of games like that throughout his entire career too. I remember I go back to his rookie year, the second Ravens game where he was trying to get to 1,000 yards. He ended up getting hurt early in that one, and then he was in and out of week one of 2021. So there's been a couple of situations with Higgins where he's had these injuries that, he's out there and he's been playing. Either he gets injured in game or he's been dealing with something and it's just prevented him that particular week. And obviously hamstring injuries are pretty tricky and you don't want to keep retweaking it because then it just never gets better. So definitely some careful paths to traverse there for the Bengals and for T. Higgins. And then you see Laurel Failer here, who covers the Cincinnati Bengals. If you are listening to this after the fact, or if you are watching it after the fact, maybe you want to close your eyes or plug your ears or both if you get kind of grossed out by this stuff. But the quote was, "It's going to hurt, but I'll make it work." He said the bone actually came through his skin, John. Wanted to get back in the game because Higgins was out and he felt the team needed him, but the other wide receivers had it covered. The bone went through the skin. That is just kind of nauseating, but a lot of detail there for Tyler Boyd, and obviously a lot of pain.
Almost
there.
Too much detail, I would say.
Yeah, that's a little much. That was a little much. I hadn't seen that article yet about exactly what was said there. So I queued that up and I kind of was surprising myself a little bit. And I was like, I read that and I was, oh boy. But regardless, the Bengals are a little bit hobbled going into this one. And then we'll just take a quick look back again at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They don't have as many names on there. This is a very difficult team to figure out. They're 6-7 at the moment. Yet still lead that terrible NFC South, and they've just got, it just seems to be an underachieving situation. Obviously, you talk about the coaches not having Gronk, all these kinds of things. So here's kind of the biggies here. Jernard Avery is a guy to watch, especially since he did a backtrack. Went limited Wednesday and then did not practice Thursday. Yeah, Jamel Dean, he did not practice all week. And then, of course, Julio Jones has not practiced all week. And then Carl Nassib, a guy who can get after the passer a little bit. He has not practiced. Joe Tryon, another edge player, he has been limited this week. And then Vita Vea, their big defensive tackle, run stopper. This does not bode well for them, but potentially could work out very well in the Bengals' favor. He has not practiced with a calf issue this week either. Vita Vea, big key to what they do defensively.
Yeah, Vea and Dean, I believe, got injured in their last game against the 49ers. Vea missed most of that game. I think Dean missed about half, and those are two of their best, if not their best, players on defense in general. So that's like you can't really hide that loss necessarily. Now, the Bucs have depth at defensive tackle. They still have Akeem Hicks, who plays normally next to Vea. Logan Hall is the guy they drafted this year. He was a guy that was popular amongst Bengal draft Twitter circles. He hasn't really been that great, though, as a pass rusher. And then Deidrin Senate, who used to play for the Falcons. He's now, I guess, their main backup along with Raheem Nunez Roaches. So they have guys up the middle, but none that can really impact the game like Vita Vea. He's basically their DJ Rear, and they play very similar ways. They're both freak athletes who can get after the passer despite being 350 pounds, and it really changes the dynamic of that interior defense line. And also, you got to remember, like Joe Tryon, he's been okay. I think he's been a little bit underwhelming as a second-year pass rusher, but they've been playing without Shaq Barrett. We all know about Shaq Barrett and his almost signing with the Bengals a few years ago, but Barrett's been out since week 9, and they've been having issues kind of replacing that production off the edge. Nassib not playing would be pretty key too, because he's been productive in a limited role. So there are just a lot of injuries on this defense right now. I guess the good news for them is that both Mike Edwards and Antoine Winfield, both safeties, they appear to be on the right track of coming back. So it's still mainly a mostly healthy secondary, despite the lack of Jamel Dean out there.
And then the last name on the list, John, Tristan Wirfs, the offensive tackle, not totally, you did not practice and then went limited. So that's definitely a guy to keep an eye on here. You had wrote in our show notes here that Wirfs will be out. So that's a big loss for them as well. But again, the Bengals are dealing with a lot of personnel issues in terms of injuries, Hendrickson and others on defense that could be, could kind of negate even that loss.
Yeah, I'm surprised that Wirfs actually practiced today. I read somewhere that he didn't, which is why I kind of assumed he was going to miss the game. He's missed, I think, the past couple, and it looked like a very serious ankle injury, and obviously missing multiple games indicates that it's not great, but it looked like a season-ending type injury, and all of a sudden he's maybe only going to miss 3 games at most, and that's important for them since they're still in the playoff race. So he's a freak athlete. Some of these guys just happen to heal faster than others, even if he's 320 pounds. So I guess he did some light work today on Thursday. We'll see where he is on Friday, and obviously if he plays on Sunday. Their backup, Josh Wells, he's been okay kind of filling in, Anthony, but this Bucs offensive line looks completely different compared to the one that led the Bucs to a Super Bowl a couple years ago, even compared to last year. Like, think back to the offseason. You had Ali Marpet retire out of nowhere. Alex Kappa obviously left for the Bengals. Ryan Jensen got injured in the preseason, and now Wirfs, he's been out. So it's 4 new starters compared to last year, and it's been mostly
and not by choice. Yeah,
right.
Not by choice. Yeah, like as opposed to the Bengals, exactly. So that's kind of where we are with the injuries. A lot of big names on both sides here. So we'll have to see who suits up. And again, with Higgins, I think we both agree that may be a game time type of decision, unless there's either great improvement or a backslide, tomorrow, that sort of thing. Obviously, John, kind of transition a little bit, the big talking point, and I don't know how much we want to go into this, but the big talking point with this game is, the passing of the torch, right? The passing of the power torch, so to speak, from the GOAT, Tom Brady, to an ascending elite player like Joe Burrow. Obviously, there's some similarities in the play. There's been some comparisons and all of that. Joe kind of squashed that stuff this week, and I think that was kind of the right move on his part, to not even go there. And also said, I do some things well, and he does a lot of things well, and just kind of let the compliment, so to speak, or the topic roll off here. But I mean, that's really what this. We could talk about the Bengals defense playing so well, and the wide receivers for the Bengals, and the weapons on Tampa Bay and whatnot. But I mean, really, that's going to be the the big storyline of this one. It's the two quarterbacks. It's the potential of, Burrow's already taken care of Mahomes a few times over the last couple of years, took care of the bad guys, the Titans, and many others along the way. And so now this is kind of the next roadblock, so to speak, whether it's metaphorical or even truthful, depending on how Tampa Bay finishes out the rest of this season and postseason.
He's a smart dude. I feel like he had to have known that these questions were going to come. And despite the outfits, despite all the things that you see on social media, I feel like if you don't listen to Burrow on a weekly basis like we do, you may be surprised that he wasn't like, oh yeah, like I'm the next Brady, or like, he's not as good as me. Like, I feel like there's a perception out there that Burrow has this confidence that is actually arrogance, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Like, it doesn't surprise me at all that he kind of squashed all that stuff. That's just pretty par for the course for him. When it comes to, I guess, all the narratives kind of build up here, like, I still remember like seeing so much like Brady comps to him in the pre-draft process, and I was taken back by it because like we had seen the occasional like, yeah, he kind of plays like Brady, but they were legit like, no, this dude carries himself, he plays to a T like him mechanically. We never really saw that at this type of scale, especially for a number 1 overall pick who had just won the Heisman. And it's all kind of been, I mean, we've talked about this leading up to this game for this entire season, ever since the schedule got announced, ever since we knew that the Bengals were going to play the NFC South this year. And I don't know if the whole like glamour of the matchup is diminished just because the Bucs aren't as good as we thought they would be, but it is interesting that if Burrow and the Bengals win this one, it would be only the second time in Brady's career that he finished with less than 10 wins, and this is the first year that Brady has not really played with Rob Gronkowski in the first time in a decade, and that offense looks a lot different compared to offenses of the past with Tom. Like, it's so weird watching that offense now. It's just a ton of screens and passes to the flats with occasional deep shots in between, and like it just doesn't look like the same Tom Brady, even though he does make a couple of good, like, big time throws here and there. So it is interesting seeing this matchup now at the legitimate twilight of Brady's career.
So when you look at the Buccaneers this year, I mean, there's a couple things that stand out on their record and kind of how the season has gone for them. I'm seeing right now they did have 1 2-game losing streak, and that was back in weeks 3 and 4. They lost to the Packers 14-12, and then the Chiefs 41-31, and then got back on track against the Falcons, lost to the Steelers, and then lost to the Panthers. So, when I think of Brady, here's one thing that I find kind of interesting about how their season has gone. When I think about Brady, it's, he's lost games obviously as a pro, but usually when he loses a game, that's not a consecutive type of thing. This year, for a myriad of reasons, has been way different in that regard. He has, there's been a couple of 2-game losing streaks, and that's just not really what's characterized Brady's career over this stretch of, greatness that we've seen from him. So that's something that kind of stuck out with me. And then, I want to get your thoughts on that, but I also want to get your thoughts on his perceived slight of the Cincinnati defense in a podcast here. I tend to think it's kind of an overblown thing. Sometimes you just say a word and people just cling to one word, especially when you're Tom Brady, and they take it and run with it. I don't think there was actually maybe too much of a slight there, but I don't know what you think about that and the losing streak thing that I mentioned.
I mean, this is how I know that, I'm not going to speak for you. This is how I know I don't really have that dog in me, because I see that quote and I'm just like, it's whatever. Like, he complimented
everything.
Basically 100% compliment about the Bengals, but he said, just because he said fairly tough defense or whatever the exact quote was, is like, oh, it's bulletin board material. Fairly is going to be written across the Bengals locker room all throughout, this week and whatnot. Like, I just don't see it to be that big of a deal, but I'm not an NFL player. I'm not a competitor like that, so I probably can't relate. If that's what it takes to just give you that 1 ounce of extra motivation, then so be it. Like, that's what people always talk about Tom. Like, he's the ultimate competitor. He will take anything and everything and manifest it into that extra umph and extra ounce of just competitive spirit that he needs to beat you, and that's what he's done for as long as I've been alive. So who am I to go against it? And I'm sure Burrow is he's kind of wired the same way. I don't think it's like a direct 1-to-1 comparison and whatnot, but I'm sure there are a lot of similarities there. And just with this year, man, like like them losing to Carolina in the middle of the season, I feel like that was like the first tipping point. Like, this is probably not good, and it just came after they lost by 2 to the Pittsburgh Steelers and one of Kenny Pickett's first starts. It might have actually been Kenny Pickett's first win as a starter, but that seemed to be like the beginning of the downfall of the season for Tampa Bay, and that was before a lot of those injuries kind of came up. I also have a Tom Brady stat for this year that is really interesting to me, because PFF has Tom Brady with 20 big-time throws and 0 turnover-worthy throws on 58 passes of 20 yards or more. He's the second highest graded quarterback on those passes. So Brady's arm falling off, whatever, like, I don't think it's entirely true. He's still pushing the ball down the field from time to time, and he's still doing it with accuracy. But his passer rating is just 77.7 on those throws, and it's by far the lowest out of any of the top 7 deep ball quarterbacks, including the likes of Burrow and Josh Allen and Tua Tagovailoa. So he's pushing the ball down the field, but the production is just not there. I don't know if it's timing, miscommunication with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and whatnot, or those guys are just not getting open. But this offense is trying to make those big plays work, and I don't think Brady has necessarily been the primary factor of it just completely not working. Regardless of what it is, though, he's still by far like dead last in the last 7 weeks in yards per attempt, and you can very much see that with the eye test watching this offense.
Of their games, John, I'll throw another stat back at you. That's a great one you had there. Of their they're 6-7 right now, so that's 13 games. Of their 13 games, I'm counting 11 times that they have scored 21 points or fewer.
Mm-hmm.
That is also not indicative of a Tom Brady offense, a Tom Brady led team, and or this Buccaneers high powered offense that we saw over the past couple of years, whether that's Gronk, whether that's Brady, whether, it's a myriad of factors. That is just looking at the scores, and only once have they even gotten up to 31 points. And I know 31 points isn't always the easiest to achieve in the NFL, but the 31 points was a loss. So, I just look at that, the points that they're scoring or not scoring. The Panthers 21-3, beating the Rams 16-13, losing to the Browns 23-17. You look at some of these numbers, barely beating the Saints the other Monday night 17-16, scoring 7 points last week against the 49ers. This is just not what I recognize with Brady and what I've seen from him.
Yeah, they're 0-3 against AFC North teams this year. They lost to the Steelers by 2. They lost to the Ravens by 5. They lost to the Browns in overtime by 6. So I don't know if that's a trend for them losing by more than 6 to the Bengals. And the Bengals have also beaten every other NFC South team this year. So it's been weird, because when they signed Julio Jones and they brought back Ryan Jensen, it seemed like, they're going to run it back again, and this is unfair. They have too many people, and it's just completely fallen apart. And I know a lot of jokes have been made at Brady's expense for the year that he's had, which has definitely been more interesting than most. But yeah, it's almost like, why is he even out there? Like, I guess he can still play better than most quarterbacks, or at least some quarterbacks, but it does seem like this is kind of reaching an end.
Well, I think that's a good spot to get into with predictions, key players, keys to the game, that sort of thing. Obviously the quarterbacks are going to be under scrutiny. And I think, another place to look here, John, in terms of for the Bengals key players, I think based on what's going on with Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, I think the Trents are going to be key in this one as well. And when I look at, last week and really the last handful of weeks of what's been happening on punt and kickoff returns, Trent Taylor really is someone that I've got my eye on this week, because the punt returns were not great last week in terms of amount of yards. I think he was had 4.5 yards or something per punt return. And then of course the Bengals have picked up this terrible habit of blocking in the back and holding on kicks. So, I think the Bengals will need, a little bit of a spark. I'm not saying necessarily a touchdown return or anything like that, but I think, if they could just help the field position situation more this week. I think that's going to be a big deal, be it by decent returns by Taylor or not getting those poor blocks on the return game. And then, of course, him and Irwin may need to step up a little bit on the receiving end should Higgins and or Boyd continue to kind of be hobbled and maybe not even play.
Yeah, I feel like it's just fair at this point to kind of expect the special team deficiencies to continue because we have no reason to believe that they're going to be fixed. Like, you can put confidence in the special teams coordinator because he's got a track record, but this has been a reoccurring issue here for multiple weeks now in the season. It kind of feels like it's just something that they have to deal with. It's going to be a thorn in their side, and it's never good to give Brady extra chances despite everything else. Like, he's thrown the ball more than any other quarterback this year, and they're going to just basically ride him until his arm falls off. For matchups, I'm still looking at the slot for both sides. Chris Godwin, I feel like he's still a really good player. He's like the quarterback situation is not really helping him out, but him going up against Dax Hill, I feel like Brady might have a plan for Godwin. They might utilize him more in the short areas of the field just to test Hill's quickness and his coverage ability in that part of the field. And on the other side, if you have Tyler Boyd coming back, playing with a bad finger, you also have Sean Murphy-Bunting, I think, returning from injury. He's been their slot quarterback, so that adds another starter to that secondary, and he's been really good in defending the slot. He's their main guy there. So I think both of those matchups are something to watch in this one. And obviously how the Bengals replace Trey Hendrickson. Like Cam Sample, Joseph Asai, I feel like both those guys are going to be rotated in pretty evenly. Maybe Sample as your base down guy, and Asai basically taking all the obvious pass rushing snaps, have more of an equal rotation, because I don't think you can trust either one of them for 40, 50 snaps in total. But they're going up against the left tackle Donovan Smith, who's one of the most penalized offensive linemen in general in the NFL right now. And he's the only guy that they had last year starting at the same spot. And he might be, their worst offensive lineman when you look at all those other factors. So those guys winning against Donovan Smith, I think, is crucial to get to Brady's blind side.
And then, of course, you've got the Bengals running backs too. The Bengals have been having some effectiveness running the football of late, be it with Samaje Perine or Joe Mixon. Mixon had almost 7 yards per carry last week and almost cracked 100 yards coming back. Perine the previous couple of weeks has had some highlight, plays through the air and on the ground with the stiff arm of legend right there, giving the business to a couple different people. So with those two guys, and then of course Vita Vea looking like he might not be in there this week, that is a big area that I think is a key for this team. And I think even with Brady potentially, not looking like peak Brady, those are the things where, if you have some offensive balance and if you're not giving up massive swings of field position because of special teams penalties, not getting yards on returns or both, those are the types of things that a guy like this takes advantage of. Even at this point in his career and all of that, he's still fantastic in a lot of different ways. And, it's one of those things where the margin of error, kind of like when you go up against a Mahomes, the margin of error is pretty slim. So when you shoot yourself in the foot in a lot of different ways, you're going to need to, you're going to have to limit that. And so, the Bengals are one of the least penalized teams in the league and have been so under Zach Taylor, but still that field position stuff has to even out when the defense gets a stop or whatever the case is. That can't happen this week.
For all the hype and the billing that this quarterback matchup is getting, it would just be so. It would almost be like the NFL wrote the script if it came down to one of the teams making the mistake and allowing the other team to have a game-winning drive. How do you feel like this is going to go?
Well, so I think I'm looking at the Bucs schedule here again, and I think the one a couple of weeks ago against the Saints where they came back and had that flurry to win that game, I think it was that one, and then was it the Rams game as well? They kind of did a similar thing where they came back and won at the very last minute, and it was a low-scoring game, all that kind of stuff. And by the way, buddy of the show, Luke Knoll, with the super chat there. Thank you so much for that. I think this is kind of an appropriate time to bring up this question or questions, since we're talking about predictions and where we think the Bengals are going to go. I don't know how confident I feel in this one. The Bengals are playing well. They've won 5 in a row. they've kind of been keeping in the confines of being at home the past few weeks, and or not traveling so much over the past handful of weeks, and that's helped them. So I'd like to think that the Bengals win this game because they are the better team, but I do see the injuries, and I will pick the Bengals to win this game. But as Luke asks, with 4 games left, which ones do you see the Bengals dropping? A 9-game win streak to finish the year is unlikely, obviously referencing the potential playoff run and Super Bowl win. So, I mean, I think the Bengals, this one could be tricky, even though Tampa Bay is not looking like it did a couple of years ago. Brady's not looking like it did a couple of years ago. I don't like Brady coming off a loss. I don't like it being on the road. I don't like the Buccaneers kind of feeling like their backs are against the wall a little bit, and they got their heads beat in last week against the 49ers. So I think the Bengals win, but this could be one, to Luke's question here, that the Bengals drop. And then, of course, he also asked, where do babies come from? A bird called a stork, Luke, brings a baby to I don't know. I don't know how to answer that second one.
You're on the right track. I mean, that's what I learned.
Good to hear from you, Luke. You got to be on the program again too, bud.
Yeah, Luke, I feel like I'm just going to be honest. I think a loss comes within the next 2 weeks. This is a week-to-week league, and for that reason, it's like winning streaks and it's weird to look at like, oh, like it's not possible that they can win 9 in a row. Like, yeah, I understand the statistics in that, but like teams don't look at it like that. They just look at things on a weekly basis, and the good teams do that. They just go a week at a time. And looking at the next 2 weeks, like I not to get ahead of ourselves, but I look at the Patriots and that duo at edge, and I feel like that will give the Bengals some issues. And for all the reasons that you stated with this game, I feel like it's going to be a lot closer than some people think. I don't think the Bucs are truly 28 points worse than the San Francisco 49ers. I think the Bucs were a horrendous matchup for them.
Bad matchup, yeah.
Week.
Yeah.
Like there's so much, the 49ers are so much more athletic than the Bucs are right now, and they just took everything horizontally, just like they did against the Bengals a few years ago. I don't think the Bucs are as bad as they were this past week, and I feel like that will be reflected in this game. So I don't know. Like I do sense that something's going to slip up within the next couple weeks, and I wouldn't be surprised if it is this week, despite the injuries that the Bucs have, because the Bengals have equally as detrimental injuries of their own. So honestly, I could flip a coin and I could go with either one. Mm-hmm. I'll just say Bucs 20, Bengals 17. I don't know.
Here's the one thing that kind of contradicts what I said and a little bit of what you just said in terms of, how this game could go, will go, whatever. Joe Burrow has thrown 9 interceptions this year, John. All 9 of those interceptions have been against AFC North teams. He has not thrown an interception against anyone else outside of the division, and has played pretty much. I think he maybe had a lost fumble against the Cowboys. But I mean, you see the 4 picks against the Steelers. You got the 1 against the Ravens in the first one there, the 1 against the Browns in the first one there, 2 more against the Steelers in the rematch, and then 1 more against the Browns this last week. So when it comes to teams who are not familiar with him, and this is a team that is not familiar with him really at all. It's not like they played last year or anything like that. Burrow carves them up. So, that is a factor I think we should also consider in this one too, that not only just against the NFC South this year, but against teams who are not familiar with him on a year-to-year basis, he has been carving them up this year.
Yeah, and I think Burrow plays fine in this game. It's just a matter of like how the Bucs offense can rebound from that. Mm-hmm. From that performance last week, because the Bucs, if they're smart, they don't run the ball at all against the Bengals. It's just stupid at this point to run against the Bengals, and they're just not very good at it in general. So it's going to come down to how can Brady take advantage of 2 rookie cornerbacks with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, probably going up against both of those rookies. I'm not entirely sure how they're going to handle either Taylor Britt or Apple going up against Mike Evans, but I just feel like they're going to have more success on offense, and it's just a matter of if Burrow can match it up.
Yeah, I'll say again, I'll say the Bengals win, but I actually think this could be something that because of the injuries and because of a lot of different things, I think that this could resemble that 41-31 type of score between the Chiefs and the Buccaneers that those two teams had earlier this year. I mean, I think this could be a high scoring type of game. I'll say Bengals 38, Buccaneers 34. Would not be surprised if this is one of those ones that the Bengals do drop, though, just because of the injuries and all kinds of situations. The RoboBuck on YouTube with the line of the night, San Fran's win over the Bucks, was pretty shocking. Like that one, that was nice there. All right, John, let's start getting on out of here. We got to a lot here. We're gonna try and arrange potentially for the listeners a preview for tomorrow. We've had to reschedule Mike Golick. You've seen that probably on our YouTube channel. We've talked about it. We've had to reschedule Mike Golick. He's going to be on the show in after the holiday here. He's got a lot of stuff going on, so we're gonna have him on though. But definitely working with his camp to reschedule that one. But in that vein, John, we've got a lot going on this week. But what are your final thoughts as we drop the mic and get on out of here?
Well, you said 38-34, right, for a score prediction? Or like a potential one? That would almost match what it was 4 years ago when the duo of Jameis Winston and Ryan Fitzpatrick came to what formerly known as Paul Brown Stadium and lost to the Bengals before the Bengals, I think, lost like 9 of their last 10 games. So it is typically interesting when the Bengals play teams that they haven't played before. And yeah, it should be another interesting one today. I don't have any other final thoughts other than I got my Tres Amigos sweatshirt that you can get on Ace Boogie's site, newstripecity.com, and check out their interview with Joe Mixon. I believe it's happening right now, and definitely support all things Cincinnati now with Zim, unfortunately, in Twitter jail. Sorry, Zim.
Yeah, I wonder when he's getting out of that. So, kind of a random, I guess I might, maybe I'll start using the drop the mic as kind of a random thought type of thing sometimes. But one of the things I was thinking about is, last year, if you remember, John, the Bengals mic cart was kind of this rallying symbol, right? What would be the symbol this year? I mean, I know that was kind of a whatever you would call it, a kitsch thing or whatever that kind of just got a lot of run. I'm kind of, number one, the mic cart doesn't seem to exist anymore, or it's not just part of the deal anymore. But what I've been racking my brain, like what would kind of be a thing that we could rally around this year, like we did with the mic cart last year?
I'm probably going to think of an answer after the show because I can't think of it on the spot. I would suppose it's just another saying that's kind of morphed into their identity. Mark Duffner with his high pitched voice, they gotta play us, which I guess is the rallying cry. Like, the mic cart was I think a multi-layered like symbol. Like, yeah, the Bengals, they're quote unquote cheap and they kind of take shortcuts and whatnot, but it's just things that they kind of embrace, and that's kind of morphs into their identity. And now instead of it is us or why not us, it's they got to play us. And I feel like that's been the thing that's really pushed them forward here in this 5-game win streak.
I like that. Yeah, I just kind of racked my brain. I guess I was just what's a physical symbol, but I guess that rally cry maybe is as good as any. As a potential, I don't want to say replacement for the mic cart, because you cannot replace the Bengals mic cart, but maybe a placeholder for this year. But I was thinking about the old mic cart. I miss it. I miss it a little bit.
Same.
Maybe it'll be something if and when the Bengals make the postseason. That's going to do it for us. We're going to get on out of here. Go check out the T. Higgins interview that we have up on all the platforms. Also, Bengal Jim had Kay Adams on his show 2 nights ago, last night.
Yeah.
So check that one out too. That's a good one. And we'll be back for more, and we'll break down this game afterward. Thanks everybody for tuning in. John, thank you. And look forward to talking to you again soon, bud.
See you guys.